Welcome to 24 KEIRUS. I'm Kelly Johnson, founder and CEO of KEIRUS by KJE. Our team partners with Fortune 500 organizations in their journey to transform the workplace culture through the power of we, the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right now, we are in this series where we're looking at the financial perspective and the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion on organizations. And I've asked Terrance Hutchins, our CFO at KEIRUS, to help us in this conversation. And I really appreciate the perspective you're bringing. Always enjoy our talks. So this is kind of giving people an idea of how we operate internally and the kind of conversations, I think the rigor really to how we try to evaluate our recommendations and our practices to clients. So I know, so how has this been for you so far, talking about being on the show and talking about DEI from a financial perspective?
It's been good. I mean, like I said, most of our conversations aren't recorded. So this gives us an opportunity to share with the public some of the brain trust, I guess you could say, of some of the things that we talk about that we know are important and how we can ultimately help more people and organizations just advance in this area that is obviously being more highlighted in society today.
Yeah. So most of our conversations are more confidential. So it is a little, it does feel a little different to like be so public to air everything, but we're keeping the most, top secret stuff, I guess, still private. All right, so as we keep talking about or continue the conversation about the financial perspective or the impact of DEI on an organization, you've worked in the financial industry, nearly 15 years. So when you think about the financial industry, what do you think people might be overlooking when it comes to DEI?
So the financial industry is still predominantly white and male. And when you have a demographic that is so concentrated in one area, then one that just kind of communicates to the rest of society that it's kind of an exclusive club. And so I know growing up and starting my career in finance, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. There was a small subset of women. And many times when it came to issues of talking about diversity or inclusion, then they might ask your opinion. One, what that means is you're not asking me about other things that are important, but because I'm the minority in the room, then you should ask me about this topic because I should be the brain trust at that point. And so not that there's not a place for getting perspective, but I think it can be easy to dismiss people or put them in a box that, hey, because you've checked this line item off, you're going to be the person we go to talk about this. But it almost shows that the people that are in charge that might be the majority, if they're not having the conversation amongst themselves to see how they can better themselves, then they're overlooking things. The other part is if you're not having the conversation or you're in a group where everyone thinks like you do and they possibly look like you, that might be great when you're in a small business and you have a small group of people that you're impacting, because people naturally want to work with people that look like them. It's just a natural human instinct. However, you're missing out on the creative work of other people that see things from a different perspective. And if my presentation only appeals to a certain audience, then the other audience is possibly turned off. Or if my intent was not to turn off that audience, and I am because of something I'm doing consciously or unconsciously, and no one ever tells me, they'll perceive that, well, this person doesn't care about what I think. And if you need some help, just survey any group of people and ask them about their opinion on whatever topic it is, or make a post on social media and then see the comments. A lot of the comments will be things that you had no thought on. How did they even come to that conclusion? And some of them might just be off base. But one thing that a guy told me was a minister at my church. He said, whenever I would hear something, he said, you get in the habit of, like with chicken, for instance, you say, you eat the meat and you throw the bones and the fat out the window. Well, if someone gave me a comment that I didn't agree with, well, if there's a moniker of truth in it, or there's something that can help my organization, I'd at least want to be open to hearing it, even if I didn't like to. And I think a lot of times with organizations that everyone is similar in their views on things, they do have blind spots. And even though they may not acquiesce to whatever everyone else is saying, it is important to have that perspective so you can make adjustments. Because there's no way that if I've been doing the same thing and we all agree on it, that we're hitting the masses with what we're doing.
Yeah, that's good. It's like that we're definitely missing that diversity of thought for sure. You know, I'm reminded about when we think about what might organizations be overlooking. I remember being a part of an organization, and my mentor was the CEO of one division. And we were having a conversation, and we had a location that was in a highly unionized market. And he was sharing one day sort of the impact of our diversity and inclusion efforts on his business, which again, very unionized kind of workforce. And he was sharing with me that first of all, he made an effort every single time he would visit a location to do employee roundtables, right? So he's making himself available. He's hearing directly from employees what's working, what's not working. But in this environment in New York, he was able to maintain a union-free team. And he said to me one day, he said, Kelly, I credit our ability to stay union-free in part because of our efforts around diversity and inclusion. You know, and so when we look at, and this isn't to say that, you know, being unionized is a bad thing, it's just that for the organization and the company, we were hoping to maintain that personal and direct relationship with our employees, just like we were able to do it in other markets. And so I think that there's often areas where organizations may not see the value, you know, or they might see the value of diversity and inclusion, but they don't see the correlation. And so any maybe advice on how can businesses evaluate the way that they're operating or the way that they're engaging employees to begin to see some of those intangible value propositions?
Well, I think similar to what you said about your old mentor, where whenever they would come, they would make a point to have that employee roundtable. And as a leader, you have a lot on your plate many times. So you're thinking about sales, you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking about your kids, your wife, or whatever else might be going on in your personal life. And so it's a lot easier to just kind of have your head down and do the work in front of you. But if you have that mentality, then you are going to be missing things. And so being intentional about saying, hey, you know what, let me take a step back to make sure that I check in, make sure I'm getting perspective from my employees, making sure I am aware of the conversations that are being had. Because a funny thing a guy said, he says, when you tell somebody you tell one person one thing, you've told 11 people, basically. Meaning people talk, and when they're not being heard, they may not be telling you, but they're probably telling somebody. And when that message swells, that's what people want to unionize, because they feel that they're not being heard and they need a more organized way to be heard. And so by the time people decide that they want a union, there probably could have been multiple steps before that their concerns could have been addressed, or even if they weren't even dealt with in that time period, a plan could have been communicated and possibly put in place to help prevent that from being a part of the organization, if that's not something that you wanted to have a part of your company.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, I think, you know, there's a lot of data out there that shows the benefits of diversity and inclusion. And I think we've talked a lot about maybe sort of the savings that can come from a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or just the workplace culture in general. But I've also seen kind of top line benefits. And when we listen to employees and we create a safe space for people to bring their ideas to the table, we actually listen to them
Yeah.
and consider them. We evaluate the pros and the cons, and then come up with a plan to execute on the ones that we're able to. Being able to capture more market share, really penetrate perhaps a customer segment that we were underrepresented on in the past. And so I think that's probably the part of DEI work that I'm most excited about and passionate about, maybe followed by leadership development.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I started my career in marketing. And so I've always approached this work with, well, how do we grow? How do we grow? By listening to the community, listening to the customers we serve, and just a recognition that our customer base is diverse and it's continuing to become more and more diverse, just looking at the birth rate in this country and globally. So I don't know, anything you want to share or add to kind of that top line perspective?
So I think that just kind of, as you were saying, it's important to just continue to have it on your conscious mind. I just go back to thinking, number one, in our society, the emphasis on just welcoming other people. And I think that if you don't have that as a priority, then it may be something that kind of slips through the cracks. And whenever you're wanting to, many people, specifically in leadership, when they talk to their employees, they talk to their customers, they want them to have positive things to say. You think about Amazon, right? Most of the things that you buy online, you go to the reviews. Right. All right. And if it has poor reviews, then it kind of dissuades you from making a decision.
Right.
And so what you were going to do, the other people that had something to say may, discourage you from going forward with it. So that could be with someone that you hire. If you had to get a reference for your employership, you think, what would these people say? If my customers had a reference, if maybe they stopped working with us, was it because they didn't feel like they were heard, or maybe the diversity in our group didn't fit with the group that they're trying to serve, or whatever those things are? I think the more group opinion that you can get, and obviously there's a lot of information out there, but how you kind of curate it and you look at deciding on what is important, but at least you have the information to decide.
Right.
If you don't have the information, then you're kind of flying blind in a sense. And if anyone's kind of, you don't drive a car looking at the rear view, right? you kind of,
I hope
you
not, please.
You want to look and have a clear sign of view on where you're going, so that if you need to pivot, you can do it. Right. If whatever obstacles come, you can kind of avoid them. But you at least can have a better perception of what is coming. Yeah. And when you're not getting that group opinion, you're probably not going to see it until it's right there in front of you.
Absolutely. Well, and I know we're almost out of time, but I think about Blockbuster, right? You think about those businesses that are obsolete, or just, those businesses that were able to actually pivot during the pandemic and become even more successful, right? And when we are not tapping into our employees and really listening to their ideas, we can run ourselves into becoming a dinosaur, extinct. So I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Terrance, and thank you as always for tuning in to 24 KEIRUS. We're here to support your journey in being fully committed to living diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and in the community 24/7, 365. Until next time, we'll see you soon.